Welcome again to Joe Stunner Boxing. So Joe Cordina defeats SHAVKATDZHON I knew I was going to get this wrong. SHAVKATDZHON Rakhimov. There you go, SHAVKATDZHON. I got the SHAVKATDZHON bit right and I forgot the Rakhimov bit. Anyway, he defeats that Tajikistan fella, on a split decision, and it was a great fight, terrific fight. He becomes the IBF super featherweight champ second time round because he got stripped, and Rakhimov won the belt, and then it's round robin. But it was a split decision. Cordina and Rakhimov put up a fantastic spectacle, really excellent fight over in Cardiff. Cordina was 15-0 coming in. Rakhimov 17 wins and 1 draw. And, you've heard the phrase, leaving it all in the ring. Well, Rakhimov, even though he goes home, perhaps he thought he won the fight, and it was a very, very close fight. We'll come to that in a minute, the scoring in a minute. He left everything in the ring. I mean, Christ, did he ever. And Cordina, he probably had a little bit more to give. I mean, he was a little bit too conservative for me in some of the rounds. And again, I'll come to the scoring in a minute, but I mean, terrific fight, absolutely fantastic fight. From the word go, Rakhimov, as we expect, putting pressure on, constantly cutting the ring off, constantly putting, again, we always say about the mental pressure as well as the physical stuff early on. He wanted it up close and personal. He wanted the phone booth warfare. He wanted to constantly throw, big meaty punches whenever the guy was close. And Cordina, very slick, much more of a mover. Although, to be honest with you, the first 2 rounds he was standing and fighting, and he did the odd little, semicircle or pirouette, or he was kind of. He sort of, the impression I got is that he thought, I should be moving, but you know what, I want to stamp my authority from early on. And also, of course, he's in front of the Welsh fans who are absolutely singing their hearts out, and he's probably thinking, I'm not going to stink the joint out, I'm going to absolutely give them something to remember. And he did, as did Rakhimov. But the second round, it seemed that rather questionable tactic of exchanging leather with Rakhimov was going to pay off, because he landed a fantastic, I don't know what it was really. Was it a hook or a straight punch? It was like a weird sort of, because he's an orthodox fighter, it was a weird sort of hook come jab. And suddenly Rakhimov, who'd swung low and sort of stepped into it, he was on the floor, and the crowd went absolutely mental. But here's the thing. Rakhimov gets up, Cordina puts it on him, Rakhimov survives the round. Now, in those first 2 rounds, Cordina, I'd noticed that Cordina, especially in the second round, had landed some very good body punches. In fact, I think one of the body punches hurt Rakhimov just before the knockdown. And in the third and fourth round, what did he do? Didn't throw a single punch to the body, or if he did, I missed it. I mean, I've only watched the fight live once. I haven't watched it back at all. So I might be mistaken. But it looked to me like suddenly he's headhunting. And how many times have we seen this? A guy hurts another guy. Suddenly he wants to throw nothing but punches to the head. Completely ignored the body. I gave rounds 3 and 4 to Rakhimov simply because he was allowed to come back into the fight. And he himself was doing some very good body work. And I think it was the 5th round, he really hurt Cordina. Again, I might have these rounds not exactly right because I'm doing it from memory, having watched it live. I haven't watched it back. But I think it was the 5th round. He hurt Cordina and did hurt him. Didn't put him on the floor, but he had Cordina buzzed badly. Cordina had his back to the ropes, wasn't falling in and grabbing and holding. He was trying to cover up a little bit. Didn't put the earmuffs on, but I think he was trying to look into counter, which is a really dangerous thing to do. And Rakhimov just railed on him, just, landed some great punches. And you thought that the tide has turned here. Well, I think in the 7th round, was it the 7th round? I think suddenly it was sort of nip and tuck. And then suddenly Rakhimov had this incredibly bad cut over the left eye. I mean, it was actually contained very well by the cutsmen in the corner. Rakhimov had Freddie Roach in the corner. Freddie Roach deals with only the best professionals, and they did him proud because they shut the cut. But it was a bad cut, and this understandably gave Cordina, a sort of second win, so to speak. Rakhimov, the swelling underneath the eye, even though the cut was shut, the swelling under the eye, especially in the last few rounds, was really pronounced. The eye was actually closing, although we could still see out of it. But I felt that Rakhimov was giving absolutely everything and was edging rounds through sheer industry, through sheer refusal to back off, refusal to not throw punches. And Cordina was being too conservative from rounds sort of 8, 9, 10, maybe. And for that reason, I was giving Rakhimov a lot of close rounds, a lot of them. Now, the DAZN team, every time Cordina landed a punch, they were cheering. They were, oh, what a great... And yes, they were very flashy punches that were being landed by Cordina. But at every round, there's 3 minutes to it. And you've got to count the rest of those, the rest of the work that's done, whether it's the away fighter and no one's cheering him, or whether it's less flashy, but, nevertheless effective. And also, of course, every time Cordina landed, the crowd were cheering. So did this influence the judges? I don't know, but Tony Bellew, of all people, who normally favours the DAZN fighters, he had it. I think after 11 rounds he had it even, or something like 10 or 11 rounds he had it even. And I felt in the last round, I thought if Cordina's going to win this, he's got to finish big, and I don't think he really did. I thought Rakhimov, again, Cordina was landing flashy individual pot shots, and he was really clocking Rakhimov flush. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with Rakhimov's jaw. He's got a fantastic jaw. And I was thinking, if Cordina loses this fight, he is going to rue not going to the body consistently after that knockdown and really softening Rakhimov up. Because the one thing we know about Rakhimov is he's got a brilliant engine and, a steel jaw, and he can fight. He'll fight until he falls over. Well, I gave the last round to Rakhimov, and with it, I gave him a win, 114 to 113. 7 rounds to 5, but there's a 2-pointer in the second round for Cordina. If I watch this fight again, I can well believe that I would score it for Cordina because of the discrepancy with the point off. Unless you give even rounds, which I don't, it's going to be difficult, for it to be a draw. But, I've got no problem with few points either way. One of the judges had it very, very wide for Rakhimov, 116, 112, something like that. 111, 116, way too wide for me, way too wide. But I've got no problem with people saying Rakhimov won it. Cordina, yeah, if you thought he nicked it, no problem at all. But this was a very close, grueling fight, and I thought, as I looked at totted up my card, having watched it live, I thought, okay, I've got Rakhimov one ahead. If Rakhimov wins this, Cordina's he's going to be so frustrated at not doing more in some of those rounds because Rakhimov was pinching him. At the end of the fight, Cordina looked, I wouldn't say fresh-faced, he had bruises on his face, and he was, he wasn't huffing and puffing, he was walking around the ring celebrating, and, before the cards were announced, Rakhimov very noticeably was leaning over the ropes, looked absolutely exhausted, he sat down, and when the result was announced, he burst into tears. He was in his corner, he burst into tears. He was in his corner crying, head in his hands, very, very, obviously heartbroken. But the guy from Tajikistan, he's got nothing to be ashamed of at all. I mean, the whole of Tajikistan can be proud of this guy. He fought like an absolute warrior and a true champion. And they said to Eddie Hearn afterwards, how about a rematch? And Eddie was like, oh, no, we're going to go for the unification. Look, Eddie Hearn knows that Rakhimov on a different day could beat Cordina, definitely. He doesn't want to go anywhere near Rakhimov because he knows that there's a chance Cordina would lose the belt. Even though this was a great fight, a terrific fight, a fantastic event over in Cardiff, Eddie Hearn won't entertain this again. It's too much. There's too much risk involved, and I do feel slightly that Cordina kind of got out of jail with this. Although he boxed very well in places, he landed some great punches, and clearly he won rounds very clearly. He had the guy on the floor, but I just feel Rakhimov. I do feel a little bit for Rakhimov having come all this way only to lose his title. But there again, Cordina didn't lose the title in the ring. He had it. I think it was unfairly taken off him by the IBF. But anyway. Terrific fight. Hearn was talking about unifications for Cordina. We'll see. But at the moment, he is the IBF super featherweight champion of the world. And how about as a first defence, the old brown flash, Zelfa Barrett. Both on this card, actually. That could be an interesting one. So what did you think of the result, the fight, the fighters? Let me know all your details, all the details of all your opinions below. I like reading your comments. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and spread the word about Joe Stunner Boxing. Let's build it up. Come on, let's build all this stuff up. Let's build this channel up a lot. Thanks, as always. We will speak again soon. It wasn't a bad fight, was it? See you later. Bye for now.